commits economic suicide as they pass a resolution that bans all Russian gas imports by next year. Europe was just talking a big game about how they need to reduce reliance on the United States after Donald Trump's unhinged comments and threats about Greenland, only to do this, which will make them even more reliant on expensive United States gas. This is essentially Europe sanctioning themselves. They realize that the rest of the world can buy Russian gas, right? Including China, India, and the entire global majority? That's the most pathetic thing about this. The EU failed to actually cause substantial harm to the Russian economy because the only thing they did was open up the market to BRICS countries to buy cheap Russian liquefied natural gas. So essentially the only thing European leaders accomplished was increasing the cost of energy for their own population in order to serve the United States interests. United States neocons dreamed of separating Russia and Europe the same way they dreamed of separating Russia and India and Russia and China. The only difference is that China and India isn't completely fucking stupid.
What's poppin', my friends, my family? Welcome back to Nick at Prime Time. As you guys know, I'm always in the live cooking. I had a banger hotspot video that just came out with about Melania Trump and Epstein connections. I made sure that my Friday stream I already posted on my channel. Posted on my Upscrolled, which I'm greatly enjoying as a censorship-free anti-Zionist app. I explained before, Upscrolled is like Blue Sky, but instead of being infested with shit libs, it's full of people who support Hamas. It's base as hell. So I have that hotspot video coming out on Melania. And yeah, it was in response to the Melania movie because the person who directed it was Brett Ratner, who was in the Epstein files. So I did this whole dive this morning. Like first I was about to cover her documentary and how the director was part of the Epstein files. You know what I mean? Raped a few women, fled to Israel. And then I went down this rabbit hole where I discovered how Melania Trump is like some sort of fucking whore who was bought by Epstein and the capitalist elite. They passed her around a few times. She's Jeffrey Epstein's ex-girlfriend. And then her and Donald Trump meet. But we get to that more. You guys watch my hotspot video on that. I may do a segment more in detail later, but you guys know we gotta cook with foreign policy first. Big shout out to my friend Casey here. What's poppin', my friends? Hope you guys are doing well. Yeah, dude, our entire capitalist class is full of criminal, human trafficking, drug addicted, blood cultists. Like I think Americans and people in the West in general is not ready for the conversation on how the United States government and the NATO European elite engage in mass human trafficking systemically. It was famous how they used to traffic Ukrainian women, Ukrainian girls. Speaking about Ukraine in Europe, let's get to our first story. We have Carl's out joined today. I'm gonna try to cook as much as I can before he gets here. But look at this insane. This is from the Denmark Prime Minister. Continuing my coverage of Europe committing economic suicide. Don't get me wrong, United States leaders are incompetent, but nothing reaches the next level of Europe. Because Europe has completely deindustrialized themselves. They are now escalating the energy crisis that they're already facing. Because in order to serve the interests of United States neocons, they're going to sanction themselves, because once again, this is just a sanction on Europeans and their energy cost. Because India, they enjoying cheap Russian liquefied natural gas. And the West tried to pull India from Russia and try to use the same tactic that worked on Europeans because they was more than willing to accept it. And India was like, dude, we're not going to stop buying Russian gas. You guys are out of your goddamn mind. You guys are out of your goddamn mind. Donald Trump threatened tariffs. That didn't do it as well because India was like, bro, you guys not doing shit to China because you know you don't have the cards to play against China, so you guys punishing us instead because China is still buying Russian gas. Russian gas is pumping through Africa. They're building pipelines and energy manufacturing plants in Ghana, many places. I need to do a segment on that. Like Russia is playing a big part in building energy infrastructure with African states. This is why Emmanuel Macron, NATO, and the United States is panicking because they completely lost their foothold in Africa. You have Burkina Faso that's embracing Russia. You have countries that are even close satellites to the United States, like Nigeria and many others. You have European countries attacking them and claiming that they're victims of Russian propaganda because they're addicted to Russian gas. So, fam, this is Europe doing this to themselves. And it was led by dipshit leaders like Denmark's prime minister here. Let's show you this clip of her.
We have been able to take a very, very important decision within the European Union to phase out fossil fuels from Russia. And I think, or I hope that all Europeans can see now that it was a huge mistake to be dependent on Russian fossil fuels. We should.
How was that a big mistake? By giving your people a cheaper alternative for their energy needs, now there's a massive energy crisis in Europe. Europe has been relegated as completely insignificant on the global stage. Completely didn't. How is this strategy that you guys are doing now by propping up the United States energy sector by making yourself wholly reliant on the United States? How does this benefit your people? This is what they will never answer. These unelected, these fraudulent leaders, they were never able to explain an argument directly on how their neocon, hawkish, anti-Russian policies will benefit their people. But they don't have to because the NATO, United States propaganda machine, they destroy any politician. They destroy anyone in Europe who doesn't repeat the neocon United States talking points on the Ukraine proxy war. Because I told you, this is game time. Ukraine was the big gambit that the West had to take on Russia. They got Taiwan and China. They have Israel as their bully in the Middle East. This is prime time for them. This was go time. That's why everyone got the call. Every single progressive, established progressive in the United States and in Europe, they all supportive of NATO now. Even those like Ro Khanna, who used to criticize funding Banderite Nazis in Ukraine. Ro Khanna and many people in the West used to be critical of this effort to wage war against Russia using Ukraine. And you notice how they all got the call at the same time, and they immediately start repeating the script. Because if you don't, you will be supplanted by capital. Because the United States, and by extension their neocon puppets in Europe, we are dictated by a dictatorship of capital. Anyone who speaks about how ridiculous not having a diversified energy sector is for Europe, anyone who advocates that, hey man, I don't think having Ukraine as a part of NATO is such a big deal for us to taint the quality of living for our people. If you said that, you will get immediately trashed by the European elites. You'll have tons of dark money and institutions fighting against you. It'll be the end of your career. You won't be able to go to the private sector. They will economically and financially ruin you. But tell me more about that amazing democracy that you guys have. This is why progressives and liberals annoy the fuck out of me, because they're like, we gotta save our democracy. What democracy? Our democracy is under threat. We don't have a democracy. We have a dictatorship of capital, which is exactly why every single European leader, from Denmark to Finland to Switzerland, all these countries, they sound the exact same on this issue. So let me finish this, because this gets even more ridiculous here. I'll finish it in full this time.
Very, very important decision within the European Union to phase out fossil fuels from Russia. And I think, or I hope that all Europeans can see now that it was a huge mistake to be dependent on Russian fossil fuels. We should never have done that. And now we have to make sure that we will have no dependencies on other countries outside Europe, not only on energy, on everything. And that's why I think nobody can discuss energy without discussing security. And nowadays you cannot discuss security without discussing energy. So we have to scale up, we have to speed up, and we have to be able to produce the energy that is needed for our households and for our businesses. So also in this area, we are in a hurry. And that is why the decisions that we have been able to, we will sign today between Germany and Denmark is so extremely important. But a Europe that is depending on others is a more fragile Europe. So also on energy, we have to move forward on our own.
So you explain how Europe needs to establish their own independence. So in order to establish European independence, your strategy has become dependent on United States energy. You guys were just complaining about how Donald Trump is this crazy madman, but you have no cards to play against him because you guys are completely dependent on United States energy now. You want to know what happened? You want to know what makes this hilarious? Right as the European Union committed economic suicide by banning Russian gas, you had American gas that immediately skyrocketed in price. Look at this. You guys see what the American capitalists wanted? This is what they dreamed of. And the European leaders sold their people out in a quickness. You had neocon fantasies about separating Europe from Russia. They explained how this was extremely important. There are many neocon think tanks like the Atlantic Council, many others, who like, man, it's one of the most important strategic things the United States could do is separate Europe and Russia. And they wanted to do that so United States oil companies can greatly profit, not to improve the quality of life for Europeans. But look, the energy prices immediately skyrocketed by 40%. This is idiocracy in a nutshell. Look at these elite intellectual thinkers of Europe. Do you think these people have a single independent thought going around in their low IQ mind? No, they are given direction from their NATO master, which is ran by the United States, which is funded by the United States, which is directed by the United States to sell their people out, and they are more than happy to do it. In fact, they are bragging about it. So this is what they get because they will listen to these people. Like this is the article I had up earlier. These neocon dipshits. This was written earlier this month. This was a few weeks before they passed the ban on Russian gas. So you guys see how there was neocon propagandists writing for The Guardian. There was neocon propagandists writing in Washington Post, in New York Times. There wasn't a full-blown blitz attacking Europe and European leaders for, quote-unquote, fueling Putin's war by importing Russian liquefied natural gas. It said despite Brussels' pledge to ban Russian LNG by 2027, which is now an official reality, shipments to European ports increased last year. So, fam, Europe is already going through an energy crisis because they decreased their because the overall reduction over the last 3 or 4 years. And now they're going to make it worse because now they're going to rely specifically and only on expensive ass United States gas. Do you realize how much they just fucked themselves over? And they gave Donald Trump all the cards. And now Donald Trump can just do whatever he wants to Europe because what happens once they ban Russian gas and Donald Trump wants to take Greenland and he uses energy prices as a threat? Yeah, karma is a bitch. No one should feel bad for Europe. The people who took part in the war on terror, helped torture civilians on behalf of the United States. These people are in support of United States imperialism until they are mildly threatened by the United States. And I also want to leave a comment. This is what I've been thinking about as well, about whether this tension between Europe and Trump, Europe and the United States is real or not. And I can see the argument that this is bullshit, that the whole tension between Europe and Trump was nonsense, because if there was true tension, why would you do this? So I can see the argument that this a kayfabe, fake pro wrestling tension between Europe and the United States as a way to justify further military spending and cutting of social programs so they can have security independence. Because remember, Donald Trump wanted Europe to provide more for their defense. The capitalist class in America, they wanted Europe to cut their social spending. Like, man, why are you providing your people health care for? Don't you know that we don't have a Soviet Union to compete against anymore? Don't you know that we don't have a massive superpower that we pretend that we treat our people better than them? So ever since the fall of the Soviet Union, you see the United States and the West slash social spending because they don't have to pretend no more. There's no comparison. We don't have to worry about anti-Soviet propaganda. Now they're getting around beat by the Chinese propaganda, which is 100% effective when they actually engage in it. But I think there's a good argument to be made. And I also want to leave a comment. I'm mad I don't remember your name. But it made me think about this, that this probably fake just so they can justify the expansion of the military-industrial complex with funds these people campaigns, that funds their, and it is the main driving source behind their power. So let's listen to this.
Let me be very clear. We want strong transatlantic ties. The US will remain Europe's partner and ally, but Europe needs to adapt to new realities. Europe is no longer Washington's primary center of gravity. The shift has been ongoing for a while. It is structural, not temporary. It means that Europe must step up. No great power in history has ever outsourced its survival and survived. These developments put a severe strain on the international norms, rules, and the institutions enforcing them that we have built over 80 years. The risk of full-blown return to coercive power politics, spheres of influence, and world where might makes right is very real. Since we last spoke here, the virus has started to spread. Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney hit the nail on its head in his own speech in Davos. It's time also for Europe to take down its sign, to acknowledge that this tectonic shift is here to stay and act with urgency. When I was a schoolgirl in Estonia, before anyone had mobile phones in their pocket, many schools used the bell system to tell you the time. The first bell was a signal to go to the class. The second bell was a warning. And the third bell meant that you were late and there would be consequences. We are now dangerously close to the third bell.
So what we're going to do instead is make ourselves completely reliant on the United States and become even more dependent on them for our energy needs. So you guys see how they're setting this up as a way to justify spending more on their military spending so they can continue to implement austerity in their countries. Because I explained how the BlackRock Prime Minister of Germany, Friedrich Merz, he's cutting pensions so they can send money to Israel, so they can hit the 5% NATO funding goal. So this is why I'm starting to believe that this is bullshit. Like, you guys see how they engage in psyops on so many different levels. They want to present this idea that they're actually fighting when they're not. So Europeans will accept austerity on their population. The same thing that Americans have just accepted. Like, we have a $1 trillion military budget. As millions don't have health care, as we have Americans that are freezing to death, as the working class continue to struggle, $1 trillion military budget. And they don't. And the American ruling class don't have to do shit, but say, hey, don't you know there's some brown people over there that want to murder us? And then white Americans be like, God, no, I got to fund the military more. In Europe, they got to do these complex psyops. That's the theory, guys. Just a theory I have. Yeah, for sure. I've been thinking about this for a while, and I think you're onto something. There's someone else in the chat mentioned, this is 100%. I've been following this very closely. There's a lot of political theater to this. This is a great super chat. Thank you for the super chat, Dave, because I did see this energy. I did see this trade deal, and I didn't see anything about energy. Thank you, Dave, for the 499. He says Europe and India just signed a huge trade deal, though. Didn't it include energy? So let me put this back up, actually. I didn't get a chance to really read the details of the trade deal, but it's more about removing tariffs, having a free exchange of labor, because there were a lot of conservatives that were pissed because now there are going to be a lot of Indian skilled workers that will be allowed into the EU. And I've been reading this. I don't see anything that say energy. You know what I mean? Like he says, the free trade agreement will see India reduce tariffs on European automobile and agricultural products, while the EU will do the same for Indian textiles, leather, marine products, gem, and I don't see anything about energy. But I could be missing something because I didn't get a chance to really study this trade deal between India and Europe as a whole. But I appreciate the super chat and bringing it to my attention. I don't see anything that says, but I could be missing something. That's always a possibility. I'm trying to see if I can find. Here it is. I think this is a good time to get to it because it also shows the incompetence of European leaders. Bro, the right wing on this super chat, bro, they're going crazy. Like, bro, they're going crazy about this trade deal with India because there's like a lot of racism that white people have against Indians. The same with black people, the same with indigenous people, Palestinians. But look at this. This is a part of the trade deal, apparently. Yeah, here, Dave. Thank you for the super chat, man. And thank you for spurring conversation. Look, this is the only thing I got a chance to really look into on this deal. And I've been greatly enjoying how the ruling class has been melting down. I mean, sorry, not the ruling class, the right wing. The super anti-immigrant right wing, bro. They are currently freaking the fuck out. Look, the EU signs an agreement on mobility with India, facilitating the movement of students, researchers, seasonal and highly skilled workers, and launches the first EU legal gateway office in India to support Indian talent moving to Europe. I don't think we need to watch this video, but this is them planning on exporting more Indian labor. And to say that the right wing on Twitter wasn't furious about this will be a massive understatement. This video in a nutshell. I don't know if I can play any more of that, but like this in a nutshell sums up how Republicans reacted to this news. Look, housing crisis in the EU, youth unemployment rate at 15% across the entire EU, and there's not a single EU citizen that got to vote on their decision to allow more Indian workers in. So once again, there are a lot of right wingers that are attacking this deal, but I understand the critique. Like, your people are suffering, going through energy crisis. You got a massive unemployment problem. The Europe economy is in shambles. And you guys see how their first thought is like, we need to bring more Indians in. We need to bring more foreigners in. So I'm not an immigration hardliner, but I do understand the critique. Do you guys? I understand the critique. I think this is a part of European leaders' incompetence. Do you guys get it? I'll try to see if you guys agree with me on this or not. But I think this kind of covers the EU deal with India. I didn't have much time to look into it. Let me do another one. I know you're covering EU scrubs, but do you have any thoughts on Scheinbaum allegedly stopping its oil distribution to Cuba? Is that true? Because I saw a report that said Claudia Scheinbaum is going to continue Cuba oil. I'll be greatly disappointed. Bro, that's actually very devastating. I saw reports that said that Scheinbaum was going to have solidarity with Cuba no matter what. And now this super chat is shattering me right now. Look at this. I just fact check this. You're 100% right. Look at this. Mexico's president says cancellation of oil shipments to Cuba is sovereign decision. I don't believe you. I don't believe you. Scheinbaum is not going to be anyone's savior. We know that. In fact, many leftists was always very skeptical of Mexican leaders because there's just a simple reality, a simple material reality that people need to understand. That a Mexican president cannot be a revolutionary. Do you guys realize that there was massive, I still remember that there was massive skepticism on AMLO, the last Mexican president? I was extremely skeptical of him because it's the left geopolitical understanding that Mexico, who is right next to the United States, literally shares a border with the United States. There's only so much that they can realistically do to fuck with the United States before the United States ruin their economy. They're extremely reliant, and I'm not making an excuse at all for Claudia Sheinbaum, but this is an understanding that many leftists have for a very long time until AMLO, because then AMLO came, and AMLO was better than many people thought he was going to be. Like many people expected just an ordinary social democrat who may speak out on some things, but AMLO was better than most people thought. So I think that's why a lot of people had high expectation for Claudia Sheinbaum. But this is extremely disappointing, and this is her selling out the Cuban people. There's no light way to say it, and people need to adjust their expectations. It's great that Claudia Sheinbaum reduced poverty in her country. It's great that she's massively popular. It's great that she's focused on poverty reduction programs and all this, but it's not good that you're selling out the Cuban working class. I will always be critical of Sheinbaum, and this is true. I just now learned this now. So this is going to be an asterisk on her forever. I'm glad that she's reducing poverty in the country, but we don't support people selling out the global majority in Cuba. So, hey, I'm not Mexican. I can't vote for her. I can't vote against her anyway. It is very good. I'm heartbroken. I've been greatly enjoying Claudia Sheinbaum's term thus far. She did a great job standing for Venezuela and Nicolas Maduro. She's been a very common sense voice on the national stage. That's why it is 100% sad to see this. And thank you Vertuzo for breaking that news to me. I didn't see that. Yep. No, I understand. Like, that's what I was saying earlier. Like, Mexico, like, there are a lot of weak European countries you can criticize for not doing enough. But, bro, Mexico really have no fucking leverage over the United States. Every single Mexican president will always be deferential to the United States. That's why AMLO caught people off guard based on how adversarial he was during Donald Trump's first term. You know what I mean? He was critical of the genocide in Gaza. And that was shocking, seeing a Mexican president do that. But people need to retemper their expectations, because a Mexican president can never be a revolutionary, ever. Like, it's not. You're way too close to the empire. But we just got to be in love with. I'm very disappointed, if you can't tell, because Claudia Sheinbaum has done great things domestically with her poverty reduction programs. But this is sad to see. It's sad to see. So thank you, Vertuzo, for breaking that for us. Zoya's life, the homie of all homies. U.S. is a genocidal criminal state. Countries will act in self-preservation when threatening. Venezuelan leadership sold out too. Not everyone willing to die. Once again, if you're a Mexican leader, you cannot be a revolutionary. I don't want to like dull people's criticism of these people, but it's just geopolitical reality that Mexico is not going to save us. And I said this on our channel all the time. Russia and China is not going to save us. Russia and China is providing an amazing alternative for the global majority when it comes to doing business with someone else outside the United States empire, and they are protecting their sovereignty and their interests. They are not going to help us wage a revolution It's very annoying when people like pretend that that's the role they're supposed to play. Xi Jinping is not here for us to have a socialist revolution, just like Claudia Sheinbaum isn't. If we want to stop the United States from threatening leaders like Claudia Sheinbaum, we need to get serious about general strikes and destroying our ruling class. That's why I try to keep my criticism tempered, especially when there's a leader popular like Claudia Sheinbaum. You can't expect them to make the sacrifices that we should be willing to make. Like Americans, they won't even stop watching Disney. Like I couldn't tell you the last time I watched Disney, ESPN. I haven't watched international soccer in a long time. And Sarah from DDG, she gave me good advice. She's like, man, nigga, you can't let these motherfuckers ruin your life. I was like, bro. I used to love international soccer. I legitimately don't enjoy. I have a hard time enjoying it because the whole time I'm watching it, like the entire time I'm watching like a good game. Like there were Champions League games that I was watching. I'm like, bro, these motherfuckers let Israel compete. The whole time I'm watching, they kicking the ball, they scoring goals. The only thing that's going in my mind, and when I usually will be enjoying the game, is these fucking Zionist assholes banned Russia, but they're allowing Israel to compete, despite the fact that Israel murdered the entirety of the Palestinian football team. You know the Palestinians that was competing during the last World Cup? You know they're all dead, right? They're all dead. So anyway, I think until I see Americans start making sacrifices, until you guys turn your ESPN and Disney subscriptions off, I try to temper my criticisms of leaders who I think are doing good domestically, but have no choice but to bow to Trump and United States neocon threats because we fail to hold our ruling class accountable. But I will admit that is kind of cope. that is kind of cope because I am disappointed in Sheinbaum here, but I think we can have multiple thoughts at once. You guys witnessing my coping session here. I've been greatly enjoying her term, so I will bring this up relentlessly. And I think her saying that this is a sovereign decision, I think she's lying there, man. She denied move with response to pressure from the United States after Trump said zero oil would be going to Cuba. I think that's a lie, but I understand that she's taking care of her own people. That's why she's popular. All right, let's get back to Europe. Yeah, she did kind of bend the knee there. Thank you, Vertuzo, for breaking that for us. Damn, like I get it. You got some drag. I get it, man. That's a big, like, bro. That's such a big L for Sheinbaum. Damn, that's sad. Cause she was killing it before this. I don't know, maybe if I missed something else between the cracks, but she was killing it before this. Yeah, pro sports is rigged as hell. Like that's like a whole nother topic, bro. And there was this guy who was caught by literally the Department of Justice for, I'll blank on this guy now. I'm not a big basketball head like I used to be, but this guy was caught rigging games, taking bets because now that sports betting is legalized. Bro, and then there was a compilation of how he was playing that game, and bro, it's a complete joke. He was like throwing the ball away, like not even being subtle about it. And they were like, bro, they immediately looked into him. They're like, he got mafia connections. So yeah, it's capitalism corrupts all. Capitalism corrupts all. Is that the guy I'm talking about? Terry Roser. I'm pretty sure I can find NBA gambling arrest. I guess I gotta use AI for this. Sorry guys, here it is. Look, here's here's the story. I mean, like bro, this blew up. I remember they got Chancey Billups. Bro, Chancey Billups was the homie. That back when I used to watch basketball a lot. Back when I used to play basketball, I used to play point guard back in the day. I used to watch during the Allen Iverson era. Like, bro, there is no era that will ever fuck with that era. I know a lot of people say that NBA players are way more talented now, and they are. Wemby is incredible. Like, Wemby is. I know the basketball players are probably more talented now, but bro, that era with Allen Iverson, Kobe Bryant, you had a young Dirk Nowitzki coming up. You had a younger KG dominating the league. Shaq and Kobe hooked up. Fam, there is no era in the NBA that will ever fuck with that era. That's why the NBA ratings are fucking tanking now. And now the NBA ratings so bad they got to openly rig games. Look, I know some people were gonna say the Jordan era was best, but fam, no, it wasn't. I'm sorry. Like Jordan was good because he had the rivalry with Clyde Drexler. You saw a young Shaq rise up. You had the bad boys in Detroit. Don't get me wrong, man. Don't get me wrong. The Jordan era was fire, and it was the best ratings for NBA history. But bro, the early 2000s smoked the Jordan era. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Jordan and Pippen ran the game too hard. There was like they had John Stockton and Karl Malone. That was a counter, but they couldn't really do shit to him. You had Penny Hardaway and Shaq back in the mid '90s, but they couldn't really do shit to the Bulls. But like in terms, I know that maybe I'm kind of contradicting myself because Kobe and Shaq did dominate the early 2000s, but bro, we was on I don't know that era. Maybe I'm biased because that's the era I really grew up in. Yeah, Pedro Carmelo. You gotta know that Carmelo impregnated like a 14-year-old girl, maybe 13. Crazy. That's crazy work. Anyway, we can get back to topics here soon. You guys know I'm just going off topic a little bit. I was a big hoop head back in the day. I'm still good at basketball. I post about it every once in a while. I still got a mean jump shot. I used to be my favorite player was Allen Iverson, but I played more like a Steve Nash type. I'll shoot a three every once in a while, but I'm mostly here to hook up my teammates, get assists. That was my play style. You know what I mean? I swear to God, bro, if I was 6'2", 6'4", I would have been at least D1. I would have been at least D1 if I was tall, because I was really good. I was really good at basketball. I'm still good at basketball. That's why to see Chauncey Billups get taken down here. Ooh, boy. Chauncey Billups. And Roser was the guy. This is the scandal I was talking about. So the UFC was ruined by capitalism. Just like team sports are ruined by capitalism. That's a whole essay about the UFC, but I'll spare you guys on that. You're like my cousin, yeah. We're all kind of like family here. Let me see. Before I get back on topic, we talking about the EU. Before I do that, I'll read some more chat since I'm already kind of off topic. Yeah, I posted I couldn't get a video. I didn't get someone to get video of me shooting because I've been working on my shot recently, bro. My shot is still fucking fire. My shot is still fire. I started playing basketball again, like after taking a few years off when I was super rusty. I'm like, dude, fuck that. I can't be one of these old ass bums who can't hoop. So I've been working on my shot. I think my shot is pretty good now. All right, let's get back. Let's get back to a topic. My ball play style is making anyone look good by either. Yeah, you here to get your ankles broke to make anyone else look good. What a great guy this guy is. Yeah, the NBA is still pushing gambling. Bro, the sports changed so much since they legalized gambling. Bro, I'm telling you guys, if I was 6'4", you guys wouldn't know me. Bro, if I was 6'4", I would have at least made D1. At least made D1. But you got to know basketball is a game all about height. So I'm just average height. You know what I mean? I'm average height. Oh, fuck, did I close one of my sources? Either way, all right, let's get back to it. Here is Robert Fico. Didn't he survive an assassination attempt? I wouldn't be surprised if it was an assassination attempt by the Ukrainian fascist. Am I getting this guy's name right? Fico? I'm trying to find his story. Yeah, Robert Fico, the Prime Minister of Slovakia. He with Viktor Orban, they're like the only people in Europe who haven't completely and utterly lost their mind. Because there are still divisions in Europe, and this technically hasn't passed yet because they're going to try to Viktor Orban and Robert Fico. I'm going to see if I can find this source I read earlier. I didn't have it say. I'm going to see if I can find it. Here from 2 days ago, I think EU countries get final approval. So is it done? I thought I saw a story where they was explaining how Robert Fico and Viktor Orban, they're gonna like appeal this decision, but I think it might be over actually. So here's Robert Fico, who is hated among the American liberal class, the same way we talked about this on Monday with Viktor Orban. The real reason why Bernie Sanders can't stand him, the reason why liberals can't stand Viktor Orban, is because Viktor Orban has been a critic of the NATO proxy war in Ukraine. He's been a critic of Europeans destroying their quality of life in order to serve United States neocon interests. And Robert Fico is too. Is this done?
Zajtra budem strašne nadávať.
I was trying to find a dub video. But either way, this is I'll just read the transcript of kind of what he said. Robert Fico called the ban on the import of Russian gas approved today by the EU Council ideologically stupid, and announced that Slovakia, together with Hungary, is filing a lawsuit. So I think that's what I was thinking about. So Viktor Orban, Robert Fico is gonna sue the EU because he's like, bro, you guys are fucking dipshits. You guys, they are heavily reliant on Russian gas the same way that many countries in Europe are. But unlike many European leaders, just like India and China, they're like, bro, we should not. There will be a death sentence for us. There's no way we're gonna follow this stupid ass shit. Yeah, there's Zoya. I need to be watching Zoya's comments because Zoya always knows what's up. She's always in the lab cooking. But I think I've been on the Europe story for enough. I think we can begin, right? I just want to show you guys the only two European leaders that are not completely crazy. And I'm not even saying that on an ideological lens. I'm not even sure about Robert Fico's ideology. We covered how Viktor Orban is friends with Netanyahu. I don't give a fuck about him. But at least these people are not willing to sell out their working class in order to serve the interests of the United States elites. I'm actually want to see if I can get. I'm gonna see if I can find a quote from Viktor Orban on this. But if you search Viktor Orban and you look at what the Washington Post, New York Times, and all the liberal corporate media outlets say about him, bro, he's like they talk about Viktor Orban the same way that we talk about Benjamin Netanyahu. Oh, here's one story. Slovakia, Hungary to sue EU over Russian gas ban. Good luck. Good luck. You guys see, this is one of the reasons why they couldn't stand them, as they was calling for a massive decrease in buying Russian gas. You had Viktor Orban and you had Robert Fico that was like, nigga, no, you out of your mind. We're gonna buy. In fact, we're gonna buy even more gas from them just because you guys on that bullshit. So it's gonna be very interesting to see how this storyline plays itself out. But this is from 2 months ago. Viktor Orban seeks more Russian oil and gas at talks with Putin in Moscow. All right, for real. I think we can move on now. Let me. I think we're gonna talk about Iran next, and the military buildup in Iran. So I think that would be our next segment here. Let me check the super chats, make sure we ain't missing super chats, and then we'll get to. I want to debunk some propaganda on this. I've been watching a lot of European neocon news segments on the Trump administration. The reason why I've been watching a lot of like Germany BBC segments is because I find like CNN, Fox News, like the American corporate media is just so unbearable, bro. And trust me, these people are unbearable too. But it's like at least they discuss these details. At least they discuss these stories more in detail. Like United States corporate media, I don't know, man. Their coverage of this has been very like liberal corporate media have been trying their best to avoid these kind of stuff. So I've been watching a lot of European news outlets to see how they describe the war in Iran, for example. And this is you had Donald Trump who's escalating these threats. Trump warns Iran time is running out for a nuclear deal as United States buildups in the Gulf. So this war, based on everything we're seeing, everything that's coming from all the Zionist outlets, that's coming from the Trump administration, this is going to 100% happen. And Donald Trump kind of tells on himself here because they said they're worried about Iran's nuclear buildup in the way they're threatening Israel. I thought that you dismantled the nuclear program during the 10-day war. I thought you guys bombed and destroyed Iran's nuclear facilities. Remember when I told you guys that Donald Trump and the entirety of the West lied to the world in order to cope with the fact that they had a failed military strategy against Iran? Actually, before I continue to say, I'm gonna actually end the RBN stream. I forgot to do that. So the RBN stream is gonna be about 45 minutes. Let's end the RBN stream. If you're on the RBN YouTube channel, make sure you guys follow me on my personal YouTube page, Nick Cruz. So yeah, so now we're on Nick Cruz exclusive now for this story. Donald Trump has warned Iran that time is running out to negotiate a deal on its nuclear program. Wait, what? I thought you said you destroyed the nuclear program, Trump. Remember the victory lap that they did on corporate media? Like, Donald Trump, the greatest military accomplishment of all time. Like, that's more a Fox News headline. But there was people on CNN that like, I don't like Trump. But you got to give him credit. It's the Jake Tapper Jewish supremacist. Like, people like Dana Bash, Jake Tapper, they was on CNN like, we got to give Trump credit. At least he took out the Iranian nuclear program. We all got to agree that's a good thing. And then I went on and told you guys that Donald Trump is full of shit. Like, Iran has their nuclear program buried deep in bunkers that cannot be hit even by bunker-busting bombs. And when they bombed Iran and they claimed they took out their nuclear program, they provided no evidence for this. The only photos we saw of the nuclear site was clearly a site that was still being protected by underground defenses. But they wanted to convince you that Donald Trump achieved this amazing foreign policy victory of taking out the Iranian nuclear program. And I believe the reason why they wanted people to believe that is because the American people was already extremely sour on the idea of bombing Iran. And if they was understanding that our bombing of the Iranian state failed, that would lead to a backlash by the American people. Because I'm sorry to say, and I still do believe in the potential of the American working class, you guys have to admit that many Americans are psychotic. And they support foreign policy adventures based on how successful they are. So there was polls that showed that the majority of the American people opposed military actions in Venezuela. And then Donald Trump kidnapped Maduro and gave the illusion of victory. And then that number of Americans who supported military attacks on Venezuela skyrocketed. Like, so you guys was against war in Venezuela. And then the United States came in Venezuela, murdered 100 people, and kidnapped the president. And then once the American people saw that there was no American casualties from this, that's when the support for the campaign skyrocketed. I wonder if I can find that poll. And to be clear, it was the increase of support mostly came from Republicans because there was a lot of Republicans who was opposed to it. Now, after the military campaign, it was, oh shit, this is actually great. That's how Americans are. That's the reality, guys. The Americans didn't oppose the Vietnam War because they were sad about what we was doing to the Vietnamese. That they was upset over the United States violating territorial sovereignty. No, the American people was rah in the beginning. It's one of the most historically rewritten events ever. It's one of the things that people use to promote protests, like the protests that don't do anything. They say, don't you know that the Vietnam War was ended because Americans hit the streets? No, it ended because Vietnamese packed your ass up. Your ass got packed up and they saw American soldiers come back home in a body bag. And then Americans started hitting the street like, no, we shouldn't die for Vietnam. So generally, Americans are supportive of war when they think they're winning. The same with the war on terror. Yeah, Bush had like an 80% approval rating post 9/11, invading Iraq. They was like, yeah, rah, United States. Then they saw the United States soldiers coming back home. Then they saw the failure to actually get rid of terror. They saw the failure in general, and they turned against it. I'm trying to see if I can find that poll. Fuck. Which one is this? I'm trying to find is this it? Look at this. I think this is not exactly what I referenced, but I think it gets my point across. Yeah, see how look, support for military action in Venezuela is growing. Though it still have more people who oppose, it's still unpopular. But the spike happened. Look at this. Look how psychotic Americans are. America, especially the Republican side and the fake motherfuckers. Look at these fake independent motherfuckers. They were like, no war with Venezuela. No war with Venezuela. Hands off Venezuela. Then the second the United States captured Maduro, they were like, oh, okay. A few of them like, okay. What kind of asshole are you? And look at the dipshit Republicans. Like on December 22nd, the majority of Republicans opposed war in Venezuela. Then they saw Maduro get kidnapped, and they like, yeah, 78% now. 4 out of 5. And the thing is, I remember this clearly happening when Ukraine was only at 28%. When at first people were like, nigga, why are we going to war over Ukraine? What the fuck is the Ukraine? We don't know what the fuck a Ukraine is. And then, bro, the propaganda, and Zoya, I know you remember this. My friends, I know you got the propaganda that we were subjected to. Like the first few weeks after the Ukraine invasion, bro. Then immediately Americans who never gave a single thought about the Donbass region, who couldn't even name the list of NATO countries, the same people who couldn't even point out Ukraine on the map, they then was like, I stand for NATO. I think we need to respect Ukrainian territory. Yeah, so you remember that? We gotta respect Ukrainian territorial integrity. Man, once again, the American working class has potentials, man. But there are a lot of American dipshits. Now you guys see why the world looks at Americans like, bro, what the fuck is wrong with you guys? All right, let's get back to Iran. So let's get back to our original point. So why did Donald Trump lie about destroying Iran's nuclear program? You guys just saw why. Because at all times, and United States neocons learned this lesson, especially after Vietnam, and it was reinforced during the war on drugs, which, don't get me wrong, Finn, they tried to maintain the illusion of victory for as long as humanly possible. Until it become, remember, George W. Bush used to hold these press conferences talking about victory successful, mission accomplished, I think. Mission accomplished. We are liberating Iraq. They tried that shit until it became undeniable. Then they were like, yeah, this is a big disaster. Like the support for the war in Iraq in America was so popular. A lot of people forget that John Kerry ran against George W. Bush, not criticizing the war in Iraq. He was like, I disagree with their strategy, and you need to elect me because I will be a better manager of the war on terror. That was the Democrats' argument that they was making to the American people, and they wonder why they fucking lost. But that was the argument that they used to win over the suburbanites, because we know white American suburbanites are the most violent and radical population in the world. Like even the projection of what people think the Taliban is, the projection of what people think of radical Islamic terrorism, nigga, that's an evangelical Christian. That's what meaning there. What you think of when you think of Hamas, for example. 'Cause you gotta know, like, Hamas is like minus 50, like in terms of approval rating Americans. Like, Hamas is deeply underwater in America. That's why everyone condemns them. But I'm telling you, the white suburbanite who lives in Tennessee, who's a Bible thumper, is the most violent motherfucker in the world. Period. More violent. They're the people who are cheering on the holy war against Iran. They're the ones that Republicans are aiming for, and they're the target audience whenever they try to whip up Islamophobic theory, because they view themselves in the holy war against the Islamic people. That's why many of these evangelicals accepted a bastardized version of Christianity known as Christian Zionism, just so they can wage a holy war against the people of Iran, against the people of Iraq. These are things that Christians have been dreaming about for generations, since the era of the Catholic Church and their purges of people who wasn't Christians. They always thought about geopolitical domination in the Middle East. The same way they dreamed about destroying and breaking up Russia. Remember, Kaja Kallas, she was like, man, we think we should break up Russia and turn them into 15 different nation states. They wanted to break up Russia and turn to 15 different states. And then these same Europeans, like, why do Russia view us as a threat just because we are encroaching next to their border? Bro, you guys are psychopaths. The American people are psychopaths in general. That's why Donald Trump had to project victory in Iran, even though everything they have done has failed. They failed to take out the nuclear program. They failed in their Mossad color revolution, which is probably one of the funniest stories, and that we will cover over the last few years, when they had Mossad agents using Starlink, which is Elon Musk, and Starlink is a tool of imperialism. So they use Starlink to communicate with each other in the Mossad and to communicate with Iranian traders in the country. Then Iran, with the help from Russia, hijacked Starlink and reconfigured the location of Mossad assets in the country and then exterminated them. One of the greatest counter operations to the Mossad probably in history. So when you see the United States and Israel declaring that they must kill the leader of Iran and wage war against Iran, they will never say this publicly, but the real reason why they want to wage war on Iran now is to avenge their fallen Mossad assets. Because there was a lot of Israeli assets that was murdered, a lot of CIA operatives that was murdered. And then they turn around and say, hey, don't you know the Iranians are killing their own people? No. Another reason why Iran was able to find those people, because people over Iran was snitching on these people. They're like, hey, man, hey, don't you see the Mossad motherfuckers over there? Hey, look, we got people over here to try to overthrow our government. Because the majority of Iranians don't support the Mossad color revolution. So you had L on top of L when it comes to the United States trying to take down the Iranian regime. The failure to take out the nuclear program, the failure to overthrow the government violently using the Mossad. So now you have war. And let's spend the last part. Let's see, what other stories do I have? I'll tell you guys, I'm just in the lab cooking tonight. I'm gonna do a propaganda report and cover how. Let's break down some neocon talking points and we get some super chats. I still got a lot of stuff I want to talk about. But
U.S. President Donald Trump has warned Iran that
I'm gonna take a quick break while this video is playing. I'll be right back.
Out over nuclear talks, saying that the next attack will be far worse. This follows the arrival of the USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier and other warships to the region. The convoy was deployed from the South China Sea to the Arabian Sea. Fighter jets are positioned in the region as well. Trump also announced that another U.S. military fleet is on its way to Iran.
There's another beautiful armada floating beautifully toward Iran right now. So we'll see. I hope they make a deal. I hope they make a deal. They should have made a deal the first time they'd have a country.
All right, let's talk about this with Meir Javandamfar, an Iranian-Israeli lecturer and author. He's teaching Iranian politics at Reichman University in Israel. Welcome to DW. We heard Donald Trump there saying that a massive armada is heading to Iran. What is your take on his statement there?
Well, I think this is a very strong pressure tactic by President Trump to get the Iranians to agree to his demands. Now, what his demands are, some people believe that he wants...
I take my visual, but you guys see? I kind of want to show you guys see how the American psychopaths, look, I'm glad you guys saw this. They clapping over the idea of bombing Iran. Now, I know these are the most extreme of the extreme. Like, what kind of motherfucker shows up to a political rally of some pedophile president? So we understand that they're extreme, but I think it's still crazy that they cheer that on.
Beautiful armada floating beautifully toward Iran right now. So we'll see. I hope they make it.
Yay! We're gonna bomb some people! Yay! Oh my! I was about to say something that was gonna get me banned, but bro, we gotta do something. We gotta do something about these people. I'm gonna just say that. I gotta be careful. So yeah, this is a pro-war rally. I gotta be careful, bro. But can we coexist with these people? I'm gonna just end it there, bro, because these people are batshit crazy. But let's continue this. And I'm gonna show you guys the interview from this guy who's a complete psychopath. Essentially, everyone who's allowed on the channel is a complete psychopath. We're gonna analyze the propaganda about the Iranian war because it comes in heavy and aggressive here.
Floating beautifully toward Iran right now. So we'll see. I hope they make a deal. I hope they make a deal. They should have made a deal the first time they'd have a country.
All right, let's talk about this with Meir Javandamfar, an Iranian-Israeli lecturer and author. He's teaching Iranian politics at Reichman University in Israel. Welcome.
You guys see who they bring on to discuss Iran? This Iranian Israeli who is currently teaching in Israel. And if you don't know, this is German corporate media. Hey, Germany, do you get it yet? Do you understand who owns you? Who are the people who tell you how to think? So you have no one else that you can grab to talk about Iran. So instead of talking to anyone who's anti-imperialist, they bring on literally an Israeli who teaches at Israel, and this guy is just as batshit crazy as as you guys can imagine.
To DW,
I'm gonna show you guys. This is his credentials.
Iranian-Israeli lecturer and author. He's teaching Iranian politics at Reichman University in Israel. Welcome.
So we're gonna bring some guy on from Israel to explain the situation in Iran. Yep, Cassie, you're right. Oh boy, there's gonna be some shit, fam. And this is what Europeans, this is what neocons all over the corporate media, this is what they want people to believe is happening in Iran right now.
To DW, we heard Donald Trump there saying that a massive armada is heading to Iran. What is your take on his statement there?
Well, I think this is a very strong pressure tactic by President Trump to get the Iranians to agree to his demands. Now, what his demands are, some people believe that he wants the Iranian regime to stop killing the Iranian protesters, while others believe that his demands are for a new nuclear deal that is far more encompassing and far more comprehensive than the one that he walked out of in May 2018. Meaning that unlike that deal, which was originally reached with President Obama in July 2015, this time President Trump will probably demand zero enrichment on Iranian soil, the complete dismantlement of Iran's nuclear program and Iran's missile program. Now, these are different views.
I thought you guys got rid of the nuclear program. And how are you, and how could anyone support the United States, or any country for that matter, telling a sovereign country what they can do with their energy, what they can do with nuclear energy? This is a massive violation of Iran's sovereignty. And do you guys know that it's a violation of the UN Charter to even make threats of war? I actually just learned this recently. I didn't know this until recently. Like in the UN Charter, you're not even allowed to threaten countries with war with demands. Like if you're like, hey, Iran, I want you to do this or we're going to bomb you. That is a violation of the UN Charter. So here in German corporate media, they just casually explaining how the United States, Germany, and Europe is allowed to violate the UN Charter and international law. Meanwhile, they think that Iran is a state sponsor of terrorism. You guys are advocating for terrorism. In fact, you were sad about the Mossad agents that was murdered, rightfully so, by the Iranian government. And the question these people will never ask themselves. This is what Rand Paul said to Marco Rubio. If you can't inverse when they had their hearing today, if you can't inverse your logic and it doesn't remain consistent, that's how you know you're full of shit. So can you imagine? Can you imagine if we took money, radical left groups took money from the Russian government and the Chinese government and was in open communication with them via the internet? They gave us weapons because the Mossad literally sent weapons to the protesters. And then we burned down churches and murdered over 400 police officers while working with a hostile foreign power. Bro, if we did that, the United States would send our ass to Guantanamo Bay faster than that will make our head spin. So fast it'll make our head spin. Then we will be waterboarded the next day. In fact, we probably wouldn't get sent to Guantanamo. We would just get fucking murked in the street. Bro, can you imagine? And they criticize Iran for defending their country against radical terrorists. Yeah, they burnt hospitals. The full story is not going to fully come out. Yeah, I think I'm going to cover that next. Rand Paul destroying Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio was testifying, defending Trump foreign policy, and a lot of it was very hard to watch because it was a bunch of Democrats criticizing them for not really engaging in regime change in Venezuela. Hey, man, don't you know that I support overthrowing Maduro too, but you should let us vote for it. Bro, I might do a longer sit-down segment one day, bro. Even the Democrats' question to Marco Rubio made me fucking cringe. And obviously the Republicans were cheering for it. The only part that was worth watching was Rand Paul, who utterly destroyed Marco Rubio. I might show it either later today or sometime this week. Destroy Marco Rubio. Because he essentially said, hey man, if you're claiming the United States is not technically at war with Venezuela, can you imagine if a country kidnapped our president of the United States? Do you think the United States would say we're not at war with that country? Anyway, I might cover that a little bit later. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of. Did Rand Paul really kiss the wall? What a fucking piece of shit. I don't like libertarians. You guys know that. His position on economics alone. I'm not a Rand Paul fan, but what did it say that Rand Paul is the only person who actually effectively grew Marco Rubio? All right, let's get back to this Israeli vampire. Who they literally said this guy is an Iranian professor. No, he's an Israeli. This is an Israeli literally teaching in Israel that they were trying to pass as an Iranian voice.
Zero enrichment on Iranian soil, the complete dismantlement of Iran's nuclear program and Iran's missile program. Now, these are different views. None of these have been confirmed. What we know from the Iranian side is that they say that there are a number of countries that are trying to mediate between the Islamic Republic of Iran and the Trump administration. They say that we're not in direct talks with the Americans, but there are a number of countries that are trying to mediate. I think chief among them is Turkey. The Turks are very concerned about an America-Iran war. They're worried about a new wave of Iranian asylum seekers going to Turkey, joining already a large number. And it seems that they are heading the diplomatic front. Also, I think another country that is involved is Qatar. The Qataris are also transferring messages between the two sides.
Whatever Trump is heading for here, we're hearing from the Iranian foreign minister that negotiations can't take place under threats. So what do you think is the most likely scenario now? How might this play out, do you think?
Well, Anya, conventionally speaking, and looking at the way President Trump behaves and his strategies, I think he's not going to back down on this. It seems that he's really zeroing in on the Iranians. He's not going to let up. I think the minimum is keeping pressure on the Iranians, and maximum he could attack them. By this time next week or in 2 weeks' time, we could be in the middle of or soon after a military strike by the Americans. And from what we hear from Iran, from the protesters, they would back such an attack against the rulers of the Islamic Republic.
This is how you know this man is a Mossad scum. You guys see the propaganda that they hit Europeans with every single motherfucking day? The United States is the most propagandized country in the world, not only because they managed to convince Americans to believe their propaganda, but they got motherfuckers in other countries repeating their propaganda. I know some people are like, isn't this an example of how other countries are more propagandized than us? No, this is, our propaganda is so strong that we force other fucking countries to repeat it. He claims that the people of Iran will support the United States bombing their country, despite the fact that this is easily disprovable, because there are polls that show around 90+% of Iranians oppose United States military intervention. But you want to know who supports it? Every single fucking Israeli. You want to know which accounts were the ones that were saying that there's 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 dead Iranians in the street because of their protests? It never fails. Every single time they are a Zionist Israeli, Christian Zionist, or someone working on behalf of Israel. So yeah, they're literally using the "we will be greeted as liberators" talking point. Insane that you're still making this argument, but this is considered. I watch so many of these neocon segments. This is considered mainstream, uncontroversial point of view. The idea that the Iranian people is begging the West, that literally just committed a genocide on the Palestinians. And the Iranian people, probably more than anyone else next to Yemen, are in solidarity with the Palestinian people, and they are disgusted after the genocide that the Palestinians came out was victim of by the West and the United States. So why would those people who just witnessed the Palestinians being slaughtered by the United States and the West then like, hey, we want the people who genocide our brothers, we want the people who genocide our Palestinian brothers and sisters, can you guys bomb us, please? Does that even sound reasonable? Does that even sound realistic? Doesn't have to be. It's either you repeat this or you are a supporter of terrorism. Because in Germany, they have no free speech. In Australia, they have no free speech. They would arrest your ass if you came out and said, I support the Iranian regime. They would say you're supporting terrorism. I don't know how much more I can stomach of this. I think I'm gonna listen to one more of their neocon experts, and then we can move on.
Because of
I'm just chilling.
Unprecedented cruelty shown by the Islamic Republic security forces towards.
Come on, man! I'm gonna go back a little bit so you guys get context. Be like, man, this is unbelievably cruel. It's so cruel that they took out our Mossad protesters. Do you guys see what this war is really about? This war is a war of revenge. They failed to overthrow the Iranian government. They got a lot of their spooks smoked. And now they want the entire country to burn as a result. Listen to this.
And maximum he could attack them. By this time next week or in 2 weeks' time, we could be in the middle of or soon after a military strike by the Americans. And from what we hear from Iran, from the protesters, they would back such an attack against the rulers of the Islamic Republic because of the unprecedented cruelty shown by the Islamic Republic security forces towards Iranian protests. We're looking at numbers that are unprecedented, numbers of killed, that are
unprecedented? So we have an Israeli, just so you guys are keeping up here. We have an Israeli that's trying to tell you that there's an unprecedented amount of violence not going on in Gaza, not going on in the West Bank, but there's an unprecedented amount of violence in Iran. Which, guys, if you change your perspective, what he says make 100% sense, because he talked about all the Mossad agents that was smoked out by Iran. The Mossad took an unprecedented loss. Yeah, compared to the 680,000 dead Palestinians and counting, that's kind of unprecedented to me. Not Iran upholding their law. I let this guy finish. Man, this Mossad asset is something else, isn't he? I'll let him finish, then we got one more.
Unprecedented in contemporary Iranian history. So there is a lot of support for an attack by foreign governments, namely probably America, if not Israel, against the Islamic Republic for what they've done to the protests. So this puts President Trump under a lot of pressure because he called on the Iranians to come onto the streets. So if he ends up doing nothing, and without, that's going to tarnish his image. So I think the least.
You guys see, this is what the Israelis been saying. The Israelis like, hey, Donald Trump, I thought you said he was gonna bomb Iran. What are you, some sort of fucking pussy? I watched so many of these segments. I promise you, this is what all the Israelis are saying. This is what all the Zionists are saying. This is what all the neocons are saying. They're like, hey, Donald Trump, didn't you say that Iran will face consequences if they murdered the Mossad protesters? Well, they murdered them. Why aren't you bombing the country? What are you, a pussy? That would make Donald Trump look like a pussy on the world stage if he doesn't follow through on his threats on Iran. Absolute psychopath. And the delusion. I show you the polls of the majority of the American people who oppose strikes on Iran. But here he like, this would make Donald Trump look bad if he doesn't launch a war on behalf of Israel. Look bad for who? Zionist scum like you?
This puts President Trump under a lot of pressure because he called on the Iranians to come onto the streets. So if he ends up doing nothing, and without, that's going to tarnish his image. So I think the least he's going to settle for is a new nuclear deal, something that is far more outreaching. If not, I think he's not going to, if the Iranians are not willing to give him that, he's not going to walk away without a war, because he would come out of the latest confrontation with the Islamic Republic as a loser inside Iran and outside the United States. I would like to conclude by saying that let's not forget this year there's going to be midterm elections in the United States. Mm-hmm. So President Trump would want to avoid any scenario that weakens his chances.
Bro, can you imagine being this fucking delusional? This Israeli motherfucker said, if Donald Trump wants to win the midterms, he better start a war with Iran. This is what happens when you have complete Jewish supremacist control of the media. Like, these are the people who are the DW. They're like the CNN of Germany. This is the quality of guests you get on German corporate media. This is what you see from the BBC all the time. The BBC, like, we got an Israeli foreign policy expert reporting out of Tel Aviv to explain us what's going on in Iran. Completely and utterly delusional. I watched one more of these just because we cover in Iran in detail. Also because I'm kind of chilling. Hope you guys enjoying this stream. Make sure you guys share, like, subscribe. We kind of just hanging out now. I got through all the segments I wanted to do, so now we're just kind of hanging out. I won't play one more. I'm going to show you guys how the ridiculous lies being told about the state of Iran. Because this guy is just as batshit crazy. We watched one more, and I'm going to show you guys. I think I'm going to do a segment on Marco Rubio next. I'm going to show you guys Marco Rubio being destroyed by Rand Paul. But let's watch one more clip. It's not too long. At least I don't think it's that long. Damn.
Good morning. Now I'm joined by Bradley Bowman. He's with the Center on Military and Political Power at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Brad, it's good to see you again. Good to have you with us. What do you expect to happen in the next few days, particularly after we heard what the president said there?
Thanks for the opportunity to join you again. The president is clearly doing what Ronald Reagan's old Secretary of State, George Shultz, said, and that is cast the shadow of power over the bargaining table. And my goodness, what a shadow of power this is. This is the Abraham Carrier Strike Group, which has dozens of fighter jets, F-35s, and F-18s, electronic warfare aircraft, helicopters, accompanied by a few destroyers, some destroyers already in the region, in addition to U.S. Air Force aircraft, including F-15s. This is an extraordinary array of combat power. President Trump is clearly trying to use that combat power to get the regime in Iran to come in good faith to the negotiating table. The problem is the negotiating table is where the regime, in my view, has been the strongest and Washington has been the weakest, and America has been most likely to be duped.
On his truth.
By the way, I said it before, you can't make threats to countries in terms of threatening them with war as a way to negotiate. That's a violation of the UN Charter. You guys notice how they don't mention that at all? And then he's like, man, we need Iran to negotiate in good faith. Motherfucker, you got the United States that literally bombed them last year and murdered hundreds of Iranians. Why would anyone negotiate with the United States in good faith? And do you guys see the disappointment coming from these European neocons at the idea of the United States not escalating this conflict?
Social platform. The president posted, and earlier today, a massive armada is heading to Iran. And further on, he says it's like with Venezuela. It is ready, willing, and able to rapidly fulfill its mission with speed and violence if necessary. So, Brad, when you see that posted by the president, I mean, what do you think is the likelihood that we're going to see something happen in Iran, in Tehran, similar to what we saw in Caracas, Venezuela, with Nicolas Maduro?
Well, obviously, military as your question implies, military operations against Iran would be quite different than what we saw in Venezuela, which was extraordinary but unique, but unlike what we'd see in Iran.
It was extraordinary. You guys see how these people are twisted terrorists? Like, to me, this motherfucker might as well have a Klan hood on. He said it's extraordinary, the massive violation of international law in kidnapping a president. Well, over 100 Venezuelans were murdered in his operation. But you guys see how they describe it as it's an amazing United States operation. But let's continue.
Than what we saw in Venezuela, which was extraordinary but unique, but unlike what we'd see in Iran. There's important context here. The context is that the president warned the regime not to hurt the protesters. Mm-hmm. And then the regime proceeded to murder/kill thousands of protesters. So they heard the president's red line and warning, they shrugged, and they proceeded to blow them off. I've been doing this U.S. foreign policy thing for a while, and I advise against red lines and warnings as a general rule, because if you don't back them up, you hurt your own credibility. And
you guys see how this is the message coming from every single neocon right now. And this is what Donald Trump is paying attention to. They're saying it on CNN. They're saying it in their segments on MSNBC, especially on Fox News. They're like, hey, Donald Trump, you say you were going to bomb Iran. And we, as neocon corporate media, we already manufactured the consent. We already spread the propaganda and convinced people that thousands of people have been murdered by Iran. So why aren't you bombing them, you fucking pussy? You guys got these neocons saying furious at the idea that Donald Trump will throw any restraints. What does it say that the people in the media, and we mentioned this many times before with CNN, when it was attacking Joe Biden for not doing enough for Ukraine? On CNN, they would do something like, should Biden do more for Ukraine? Why isn't Biden doing more for Israel? And they will grill. You have corporate media that will grill Anthony Blinken. Now, we used to do segments on these a few years ago. They will grill Anthony Blinken, like, Blinken, why aren't you sending more to Ukraine? And then Blinken will be like, nigga, are you out of your... Do you know how much I've done? So the point I'm making is, we're in a disastrous position where the Western corporate media, they are actually more pro-war than the ruling class in charge. They're the ones who constantly egging their ruling class on. Come on, man, kill some more children. Come on, bomb me around for us. Yeah, I'm glad I at least can get my audience to understand that these people are absolutely crazy. So when people ask me why I prefer Russia and China over these people are wondering why I'm rooting for Russia over Europe? Over these psychopaths? We know Europe and China are not perfect. No one say these people are not perfect, but they're not absolute demons like the people I'm showing you and the people I show you guys all the time on the show. And I'm not. What makes these segments, I think, special is I'm not nitpicking and showing you guys like the extreme voices coming from the establishment. I'm showing you guys the most mainstream corporate media, the people who are platformed the most, the mainstream corporate rational voices versus me, someone who they considered to be a radical extremist, despite they are the ones who call for the murder and cheer for the murder of children. Let's watch one more clip with this guy and then we can move on.
Context here. The context is that the president warned the regime not to hurt the protesters. And then the regime proceeded to murder/kill thousands of protesters. So they heard the president's red line and warning, they shrugged, and they proceeded to blow him off. I've been doing this US foreign policy thing for a while, and I advise against red lines and warnings as a general rule, because if you don't back them up, you hurt your own credibility and you start to get more bad behavior that requires actions. The president has issued the red line, not a bad red line. Don't hurt the innocent protesters who simply want a government that stops murdering them. But now that he's issued it, he better back it up. He better back it up in some form. And so I think
Donald Trump better back up his story, or he's a fucking pussy. Don't you know Donald Trump pussy? Like, bro, he sounds like a hood. He sounds like he's from the hood. Like, these people think they're more sophisticated than gangbangers. But he sounds like a Crip or a Blood. Well, you gonna let him walk all over your turf, bro? You gonna let him do? You talking all that shit? You're not gonna do anything? He's representing his set, and he's dishonoring Donald Trump. He's like, do you know they talking shit over there? These people are they have the mindset of genocidal children. Like this is how we used to talk on the schoolyard back in the day. Oh, Nick talking all that shit. You ain't gonna back it up though. You talking all that shit. You ain't gonna back it up though, homie. These people are gangsters in a suit. No different than Crips, Bloods, than the mafia, than the cartel. They even talk the same, which is why it's crazy to me. I feel like we're getting gaslit. They say that we're crazy and we're radical. Then I listen to these motherfuckers and they sound completely demonic. You guys see how bloodthirsty he is? How enthusiastically he wants the United States to bomb Iran? I'm actually glad I show you guys this guy. And he's not unique. I don't want you guys to believe that this guy, I didn't even show you guys his name. I don't even know his name because it's not about this guy in particular. It's a European mindset. This is the German mindset. This is the Western neocon mindset. And then people wonder why I relate more to the global South. I relate more with my African brothers and sisters. Nothing more cringe than FBA cornballs. These raccoon ass niggas who believe that they got some sort of solidarity with these white neocons, evangelical Christians. No, I have solidarity with my Afro-Brazilian motherfuckers. I have solidarity with my Pan-Africanness, anti-imperialists around the world, and I have unapologetic solidarity with my Chinese brothers and sisters and my Russian brothers and sisters against this demon. This is a demon of humanity. Their ideology is demonic, and they must be defeated. And we gotta side with their enemies to defeat them. Because you guys think this guy, he doesn't even give a fuck about the German people. He doesn't give a fuck about the quality of life of Europeans who are falling because you guys are advocating cutting their social program to fund the military more. But you think this motherfucker gives a fuck about the Iranian people? Come on, man. Come on. Actually, I think I can end it there. Fuck it. Because we're about 90 minutes in. I wanted to cover Marco Rubio. I might find some more clips as we were doing this live. I think I made all the points I wanted to make. Watching the rest of this was going to be torture. Because there's a lot more of this, but I think I made my points that I wanted to make. So let's move on. Here is Marco Rubio, and I found a few clips, and I might try to find some more because you guys know our friends at Hotspot. They always in the lab cooking. They was posting a ton of clips from this, so I might try and find some more. But I did find a few that I wanted to cover. So this is Marco Rubio testifying at the Senate, pretty much justifying Donald Trump's foreign policy. As I explained before, this hearing, which I watched a little bit of live, it was very cringe because even the Democrats who questioned him, they did it with an imperialist neocon twist. They didn't argue that it was against and violated international law and that we shouldn't take on Nicolas Maduro. You had to the Democrats saying shit like, yeah, I think that Nicolas Maduro is bad too. I think Maduro is a tyrant. But you should have declared war first. If you declare war first, then maybe I was supporting you. Like, bro, that's the resistance party. That's the argument that every single Democrat made to him. If there was no principled opposition to them murdering over 100 Venezuelans, it was, hey man, we need you to follow process. So I'm gonna show you guys just a few clips of this. This is DeMarco Rubio explaining the threat of Iran and how they put American troops in the Middle East in danger.
On the issue of our presence in the region, here's the baseline I want to set for everybody. The baseline is this. We have 30 to 40,000 American troops stationed across 8 or 9 facilities in that region. All are within the reach. Theoretically, not theoretically, in reality, all are within the reach of an array of thousands of Iranian one-way UAVs and Iranian short-term ballistic missiles, short-range ballistic missiles that threaten our troop presence. We have to have enough force and power in the region, just on a baseline, to defend against that possibility. That at some point, as a result of something, the Iranian regime decides to strike at our troop presence in the region. The president always reserves the preemptive defensive option. In essence, if we have indications that, in fact, they're going to attack our troops in the region, to defend our personnel in the region. We also have security agreements, the Defense of Israel Plan and others, that require us to have a force posture in the region to defend against that. On the issue of our presence.
So Marco Rubio and the neocons want you to believe that the reason that Iran is a dangerous state that we have to do something about is because Iran might target our military bases that we have surrounding them. So if you're worried about United States troops being targeted by Iran, what is the thing you should do, Marco? What should the United States do if we're worried about a hostile foreign power attacking our troops that is illegally occupying whole regions? Maybe we should bring them back home. Maybe we shouldn't have these military bases that put targets on Americans. Like, this is why neocons, they do not serve United States national security. Because if we want to protect Americans, if we want to prevent Iran from attacking us, we will end our occupation. We will end the military bases. And if from bare minimum, you don't want to do that. Let's say you think I'm a radical fucking communist because I don't think the United States should occupy the fucking world. I'm a radical because I don't want my taxpayer money to be spent up maintaining these bases that does nothing for the American people but put our country into more danger. Let's say you disagree with me on that point. Okay. Let's say you want to keep the military bases. What should you do in order to keep the military bases safe, Marco? I don't know, engage in diplomacy? In this clip, Marco Rubio is like, what if Iran randomly wakes up one day and decides to launch attacks on United States bases? Well, Marco, why would they do that? They would do that maybe because we're putting harsh sanctions on their country. Maybe because we're supporting genocide of the Palestinians. Maybe because we murdered and supporting Mossad revolutions inside their country that's killing hundreds of police officers. Why would anyone believe that Iran is the bad guy? In fact, Iran has been weak. Thank God Iran has shown restraint. Thank God Russia has shown restraint. I thank God every single day that China and Iran is weak. Because any American president, any neocon in the West would have been blew shit up after what the United States have done to Iran. And then you have the Iranian government that talks all sorts of good shit. I remember like Professor Morandi Like, you remember when Professor Morandi and all these Iranians, they went around and they was like, yo, after Israel, United States bombed us, it's over, nigga. We about to kill all you motherfuckers. It's over for Israel. We about to bomb the fuck out of Tel Aviv. Dr. Morandi, all the Iranian propagandists and the Iranian government, they were talking all this shit. And then the second that the United States offered a ceasefire, they took it. Even though they had every single right to wipe off Israel off the map, you had everyone who was cheering for them to do that, and they still took the ceasefire. And I am not even being critical of the Iranian regime when I say this. Thank God that they're weak, because if they wasn't, we would have been in nuclear war. We would have been in a massive regional war. It has been Iran every step of the way who are trying to de-escalate tensions. I read a story not too long ago on how an Iranian envoy was meeting with the United States envoy, and they were passing messages to each other in order to try to de-escalate a potential conflict. So despite everything the United States done, start a color revolution that murdered hundreds of their people, the massive sanctions, the economic warfare, and God knows what else I'm missing on top of my head. Despite all this stuff, Iran is still like, hey man, can we talk this out? Zoya's love, Zoya's life. I think Iran has been beyond reasonable. But you gotta see the argument that Marco Rubio is making is, hey man, what if we eventually make them snap? And they start bombing our military bases. Hey, so Marco Rubio, what should we do in response to that? Let's ramp up our pressure and make it more likely that they will snap. Like, you gotta see how your geopolitics is inherently incoherent. We can't have Iran attacking the U.S. military bases, so let's have a hardline stance on Iran. It's called diplomacy, motherfucker. Like, what the fuck? If you don't want a country to attack your military bases, you engage in diplomacy, right? So Marco Rubio is making this argument that Iran is a massive threat to the American empire, not the American people. It's very important to understand this. They are not a threat to the American people. They are a threat to the United States pedophile Jeffrey Epstein elite in their quest for global domination. So now that has been made clear, you're also going to have Marco Rubio, after just explaining how Iran is this massive threat to America, and you have all these neocons who explain how Iran is this massive threat to the Israeli state. Despite that, Marco Rubio turns around and claims that Iran is weaker than they ever been.
That regime is probably weaker than it has ever been. And the core problem they face, unlike the protests you saw in the past on some other topics, is that they don't have a way to address the core complaints of the protesters, which is that their economy is in collapse.
So on one end, Iran is weaker than it's ever been. But then on the other end, Iran is so dangerous in the threat to Israel and United States bases that we got to go to war with them right now. You guys see the contradictions that Western leaders expect us to accept, and many people do? Many people in the West have accepted nonsense. So the Trump administration, on one hand, they say that Iran is enriching their nuclear program. They're going to develop a nuke. I know that Benjamin Netanyahu has been telling us this every week for 20 years. But Iran is super close to a nuclear weapon, and they are going to be a massive threat to the United States and Israel. Then they're like, oh, don't you know that Iran is weak? This is the kind of dissidence that they want you to have. It's the same thing that the neocons said about Russia, that Russia was exposed as weak and ineffective on the battlefield by Ukraine, how Russian military has been weakened because they lost so many Russian soldiers. They tell you that, while at the same time will tell you that, hey man, we don't fund Ukraine even more. They're going to eventually be taken over by Russia, and then Russia will continue to invade the entirety of Europe. You guys see how they tell you two different things that doesn't even make sense? And they do that strategy at this point. So this is the last clip that I have planned. I might see if I can find some more. But this is the clip of Rand Paul, who absolutely dismantles Marco Rubio over Venezuela. There was a lot of conversation about Venezuela, a lot of conversation about Iran. But I think this was the best clip. What does it say that it took a Republican senator who have the most viral clip, who was the most effective at taking out Marco Rubio, because Democrats are inherently not effective. Yeah, I think Nicolas Maduro is a tyrant. Yeah, I think Venezuela is evil, but I don't think you should do anything about it. I don't want to vote for it. They inherently put themselves in a weak position when it comes to countering Donald Trump's war in Venezuela because they accept many of the premises. Rand Paul is effective in calling out these neocons because he tend not to accept the premise. Like, nigga, even if Maduro is a tyrant, I don't give a fuck. We shouldn't go to war with him, period. Now what? Not to say that Rand Paul is an ally. He's not good at all, but he is good on this issue. And this is him dismantling Marco Rubio.
Our founders debated extensively over which branch of government should have the power to declare or initiate war. Virtually unanimously, they decided, and what was entered into the Constitution was that the declaration or initiation of war would be the power of Congress. Now, we have many advocates, many of whom are here today, who have been advocates for an expansive notion of presidential power. They often argue that wars are not really wars, that they're kinetic actions or drug busts. I think, though, if you reverse the circumstances, it becomes very difficult for these arguments to hold up. So I would ask you, if a foreign country bombed our air defense missiles, captured and removed our president, and blockaded our country, would that be considered an act of war?
Well, I think your question is about and I will acknowledge you've been very consistent on all these points the entire career.
He's
so,
panicking.
let me, no matter who's in charge. So I will point to two things. The first is it's hard for us to conceive that an operation that lasted about 4.5 hours and was a law enforcement operation to capture someone we don't recognize as a head of state, indicted in the United States, wanted with a $50 million bounty.
My question would be, if it only took 4 hours to take our president, it's very short, nobody dies on the other side, nobody dies on our side, it's perfect. Would it be an act of war?
We just don't believe that this operation comes anywhere close to the constitutional definition of war.
But would it be an act of war if someone did it to us? Nobody dies, few casualties, they're in and out. Boom, it's a perfect military operation. Would that be an act of war? Of course it would be an act of war. I'm probably the most anti-war person in the Senate, and I would vote to declare war if someone invaded our country and took our president. So I think we need to...
You guys see how he gets to the core of the contradiction? Let me finish. Almost done.
At least acknowledge this is a one-way argument. One-way arguments that don't rebound, that you can't apply to yourselves, that cannot be universally applicable, are bad arguments.
And that's what every single anti-imperialist should remember. That's why I dismantle their propaganda. If you cannot reverse the circumstance and maintain your principle, you know you're full of shit and you're a propagandist. This is what I was talking about when I was explaining the reason why I do not support the Iranian protests. I wouldn't support anyone who is funded by a foreign entity to overthrow their country on principle, because that's inherently traitorous behavior. So if you're questioning whether you should support the protests in Iran, the only thing you have to do is inverse the situation. And that's what I do all the time. What if we was paid by the Chinese Communist Party? What if there was evidence that clearly linked me with Nicolas Maduro, and I took orders from Nicolas Maduro and his party to assassinate United States public officials? What would the United States do to us? And if you cannot maintain your integrity when answering these questions, it exposes you as a bad faith actor. And that is what Rand Paul did here. Completely dismantled him on Venezuela. And most people don't realize it because the propaganda is that thick. It is that deep. I found this story today. Yeah, he was dodging Ron Paul. He took him like 15, 20 seconds to even get close to addressing the question. Didn't get close to even addressing the question. He was in panic mode. He was all that stuttering. Oh, you've been a consistent voice against this. That was him trying to, how do I get out of this question? And he didn't even come close. So we've been talking about the cognitive dissonance that it takes in order to accept the premise of these conflicts that the United States is starting. Here's a CNN article discussing Venezuela, and it shows the tactics that neocon propagandists employ to convince Americans that the enemies the head of state of the enemies that we are trying to depose are unreasonable, that they're crazy, that there's something wrong with them. So here's CNN claiming that Maduro was paranoid, and they will say stuff like this all the time. Nicolas Maduro claims that the United States wants to overthrow his government. Look at how paranoid he's being. Xi Jinping in China claims that the West has a plot to separate them from Taiwan. You see how crazy he is? Vladimir Putin says that NATO is arming Nazis in Ukraine in order to destabilize Russia. Isn't he crazy? You guys see the strategy, the propaganda strategy that they use, and they're going to use it with Maduro here. They're still printing stuff like this. Look, it remains to be seen how Venezuelan people will respond to a more overt CIA presence in a country post-Maduro. What do you mean it will remain to be seen how the Venezuelan people will react to CIA operations in their country? Are you out of your damn mind? Of course they oppose it. You can once again, these are one of the things that you can easily track. There are polls that show that 90% plus of Venezuelans oppose United States actions in their country. There are thousands of Venezuelans that hit the streets. They are still in the streets. I saw clips today of protests of them demanding their president back. But then go back to the whole idea of the West want you to believe that there's a large amount of people, just like with Iran, that want to see Nicolas Maduro gone, that we'll be treated as liberators. So instead of telling the truth to start this story and say how, yeah, the majority of Venezuelans oppose United States intervention and overthrowing their country, but instead of saying that, you guys see how they directly mislead their audience on purpose by painting this story as, it remains to be seen whether the Venezuelan people actually support what we're doing against them or not. Do you guys see why people who don't read CNN, people who don't consume any news at all, there have been studies that show that they are more informed than people who do? If you read CNN and you don't do it like I do, I read it with a critical eye just so I can roast them for you guys. But if you're one of the many boomers who take CNN, MSNBC, the NPR, New York Post, any of these corporate media outlets, and you use that to get informed, that's why study shows that you're actually more uninformed than people who don't do anything at all. I tell you guys all the time, my famously apolitical family. My brother apolitical as fuck, but he hates Israel. He opposes all wars. You know why? Because he's not reading CNN, MSNBC. He's not watching the DW and corporate media. And if you're not consuming any of that garbage, the question you ask, like, why would we go to war with these countries? But if you're reading CNN, you think that you have to support war in Venezuela because it remains to be seen if Venezuelans support our war efforts in the country or not. You gotta see how every single sentence I catch them in lies. Every single sentence, I see how they are working a psyop on their population. We're truly the most propagandized country in the world. This has been a 2-hour stream of me essentially breaking down neocon propaganda, and I'm still just scratching the surface. Every single line is carefully written in order to mislead the American people, who are the most propagandized people in the world. So let's see how much I can continue here, because that was only one sentence in. They say it remains to be seen how the Venezuelan people will respond to the more overt CIA presence in the country post-Maduro. For years, Maduro cast the CIA as a convenient boogeyman, repeatedly accusing the agency without evidence, CNN claims, of attempting to topple his regime as he clung to power despite U.S. opposition. So you guys see how CNN and liberals in general, I learned this in my time as an anti-imperialist, as an educator. Whenever you quote the CIA doing anything, they say, "Oh, well, you got no evidence. They're not doing anything like that." Fam, the CIA has 20,000 employees. Do you guys know that? Let me see if I can fact check myself. Actually, how many? I'm gonna actually fuck it. Let's check now. How many employees are in CIA? He's in CIA. Yeah, look, there are 20 to 21,000. So there's like 21,500 individuals who work for the CIA. But what the corporate media and what neocons will have you believe is that despite having 20,000 people that are listed, that doesn't even count the people who are not listed as being part of the CIA. That doesn't even count the people who are undercover. And Casey, I think you understand what I'm saying here. So that number could easily be doubled because these are the people who are officially on the book and you can track them on Google. So you have way more than that. But for the sake of my argument, let's use the 20,000 number. Neocons will have you believe that despite 20,000 CIA operatives that are active, that they're not doing anything. Like whenever you bring up the CIA, you're like, well, you think the CIA has their claws everywhere? What do you guys think they're doing with 20,000 people every fucking day? This is the kind of shit that they're doing. So it's always weird to me when neocons and liberals, they repeat the conspiracy theory that the CIA is not doing anything. I know you guys accounted the same thing I have. Whenever you bring up the CIA, you have the liberal who roll their eyes, oh, it's the CIA again. What do you guys think the CIA is doing nothing? You guys think that 20,000 CIA employees are just sitting at their desk, twiddling their thumbs? Oh, wish we had something to do, boss. Nigga, their job is to destabilize governments and engage in psyops for the United States military-industrial complex. So, of course, they're always working in Venezuela. They're always working in Iran. They're always working in Russia. They're always working in China. But CNN will have you believe that Maduro or anyone quoting the CIA president of their country is crazy, deranged conspiracy theorist. But what makes this part even more absurd, and the reason why many people have been calling this out, like Alan here, because this article is so absurd and full of cognitive dissonance that they contradict themselves in the very next sentence that you guys probably seen already. So in the one paragraph, they claim that Nicolas Maduro is a crazy, paranoid tyrant who keep claiming the CIA overthrew his country without evidence. And then in the very next paragraph, you can't make this shit up. This is what they say. Now the CIA has helped supplant Maduro and is poised to actively manage the Trump administration's dealings with Venezuela's new leadership. So he wasn't being paranoid. So can you admit that Nicolas Maduro was right? They can't even admit that Nicolas Maduro was right. In one hand, they say he's crazy for saying the CIA is trying to overthrow his country with no evidence. Then the very next sentence is like, oh, by the way, the CIA was successful in overthrowing their country. Bro, the propaganda that we are hit with every single motherfucking day. Do you guys see why the United States is the most propagandized country and it's not even close? Our propagandists look at propagandists in Israel like they're amateurs. Because I know a lot of people like, don't you know Israel more propagandized than us? They got amateur fucking propaganda. And their propaganda serves their interest. Their propaganda does not serve the interests of the American people. Why would anyone believe in this nonsense? And I just really want you guys to understand and see the way and why it's extremely important. Let me address this comment here because it's easy for us to say this. It's easy for us to be like, oh, no, it's not a big deal because no one watches CNN. I appreciate your comment, by the way. People will say this all the time whenever I call it. Don't you know that no one watches these corporate media outlets? Don't you know that no one actually... If no one watches this shit, why does Nicolas Maduro have such a negative approval rating in the United States? If no one watches or no one is influenced by corporate media, why do most Americans have a negative view of China? I just showed you guys how, I show you guys all the time, I should say, how the American people have this negative view of China. Hamas is like negative 70 in opinion polls. Have you guys seen the opinion polls and how many Americans are supportive of Hamas? Nigga, we're one of the few. It's like minus 70. Do you guys think that the American people are reaching these conclusions on their own? I know they don't, because I see them repeat propaganda from CNN. So they made this like CNN. They may tell you, like an American may tell you, I don't trust CNN. I don't trust MSNBC. I don't trust the core media. And then they will quickly repeat everything that they hear from CNN and MSNBC, and they don't even realize that they're doing it, to be honest. It's the same with people like, man, I don't never trust anything our government tells us. And then they believe everything the government tells you about socialism. So this is my opinion. I think CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, these corporate media outlets have way more influence and sway over the way the American people think than a lot of people on the left want to acknowledge. And it's coming from someone who's been studying this issue for years. I keep thinking that the American people will finally change and realize that the propaganda they're being fed. But fam, it never happens. It never happens. Jill Stein got 0.2% in the polls. You have millions of Americans still voting for the two-party system, and people think that these media outlets are not influential on the American people. I reject that, man. I think people need to stop being lazy. We need to spend our time debunking this propaganda, because whether American people want to admit it or not, they believe the shit that comes from Washington. They believe the shit that comes from CNN. Ooh, all right. I think 2 hours is good. I thought Carl's I was going to join today, but probably something came up. I'm actually kind of glad that something came up. Probably a scheduling issue, because it gave me some more time to cook. You know, I was able to be in the lab cooking tonight. So I hope you guys enjoyed this 2-hour ramp stream. Let me double check, make sure there's not anything else I want to cover. I think we can wrap here. I had a China saving, but I was saving it for Carl's eye. I may do that another time. But on Friday, I have a banger panel for you guys. You guys know we're always in the lab cooking at RBN. It's my birthday stream. That's a crazy thing, bro. We out here working on my birthday. But I have a powerful roundtable on Friday. We got Fiorella Isabel, amazing geopolitical reporter. She joined us. We have the legend himself, Ali Vargas, who is joining us on Friday. We also have my hotspot homie Nico House. They'll be joining us on Friday. We got this banger, absolute banger of a live stream plan. So that should be I'm very excited for that. I had to reschedule with Ali Vargas a few times, so hopefully we can get him to join us on Friday. If so, we got Fiorella, Nico House, Ali Vargas. That's on Friday. So yeah, we got a super show coming up. Big shout out to my friend Zoya's Love, Zoya's Life. Yeah, I'm an Aqua boy. Zoya's Love, Zoya's Life. You guys know we're always in the lab cooking. Big shout out to Zoya for helping me with booking these guests. Hope you guys enjoy the show. Fam, you guys have to like the stream. You guys have to subscribe. You guys have to share. You guys support the Patreon, because in the second 2-hour stream in a row, you guys know we're just cooking all day. I appreciate you guys for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Take care, y'all.